We're now in the deep backstop position at the bottom of the valley, which is held by the Belgian Battalion and 4 Centurions of the 8th Hussars. You may remember from an earlier stand, the Belgians had had to undertake a fighting withdrawal across the Imjin River. They'd been dislocated and only just rejoined the brigade, and they're deployed in this area, which of course was much flatter, had no outstanding features, very little habitation back in 1951. It was basically open ground, and they're here to cover the last remnants of the brigade as they pull out down the end of Route 11 to the MSR, the main supply route towards Uijiongbu. Once the brigade's men are there, they'll be picked up by US trucks and will race south away from the Chinese. Early that morning, just before battle commenced, this photograph was taken. On it you can see Colonel Crahay of the Belgians looking rather ominous. He understood the seriousness of this mission. Ditto 2 of the other men in the photograph. But on the left is Major Henry Huth of the 8th Hussars, who was commanding the Centurions in this area of the battle. Henry Huth was one of those rare men who his men said actually enjoyed battle. He was a very quiet man, had great experience in World War II and had a superb battle sense, and he instinctively realized that this deep backstop position would be critical to hold to allow the remnants of the brigade, the wreckage of Tom Brodie's command, to extract safely from this area down to the MSR, the main supply route. As you can see, everyone else is looking pretty grim, but Huth, this armoured warrior, looks like is having the time of his life. As the Chinese encroach from both the north and the west, the Belgians will come into action, holding the line, trying to keep the Chinese at a distance, at arm's length. The Centurions are amongst them, using their main guns, their machine guns. Belgians have climbed up onto the turrets and are firing their machine guns from the cover of the Centurion turrets on the advancing Chinese. And it was during this phase of the battle one of the most extraordinary incidents occurred. A Centurion, a 50-ton armoured battle wagon, was taken out by the single bullet of a Chinese rifleman. What happened was, as the Centurion was moving backwards, its turret was traversed over its engine. And the Centurions in their turrets had phosphorus grenades which they could shoot to create a smoke screen. One of the bullets from the Chinese was fired, hit one of these smoke grenades. The grenade detonated, white phosphorus exploded and flowed into the engine. It ignited the petrol and the Centurion brewed up. And standing right next to the tank with his radio man directing the battle was Colonel Crahay. And he was seriously wounded, agonizingly wounded from this burning material on his right arm, and yet he insisted on remaining with his battalion until it could extricate itself. One of the Centurion commanders, Lieutenant Ted Poole, his tank was knocked out in this close combat. He evacuated his tank, picked up an American carbine lying on the ground, and opened fire on the Chinese, who he thinks were less than 200 meters distant. And this dramatic photograph was taken of him shooting back at the Chinese. The intensity of the action may be imagined by the position of the photographer, who, as you can see, is keeping low in cover due to the incoming fire. And it was in this final stage of the battle that Henry Huth, this renowned Irish warrior, really came into his own. He was advancing towards the Chinese, firing with all weapons, pushing them back, then withdrawing, moving at right angles to them, raking them from in enfilade fire, trying just to keep them back. And the people who saw it, as they were coming down the high ground, said this manoeuvring was masterly, a very, very difficult tactical situation for a single tank to hold back hundreds of infantry trying to surround the tank, close with it, cut it off and destroy it. And Lieutenant Mervyn McCord, one of the Royal Ulster Rifle officers who had escaped down valley by running down the ridge, and McCord was a long-distance runner, an extremely fit guy. He said he had one of his men was so exhausted and battle-shocked, he was hanging onto his belt, and McCord was dragging this guy. And McCord made it down to this area. He saw Henry Huth up in his turret, and a slight break in the action. He shouted, "Thanks, Henry." And Huth just turned around, looked at him and said, "Get out, I can't hold them much longer." And McCord said, "Again, I realised the stress Henry Huth was under, but slowly the Belgians and the tanks are being pushed back." One of the last actions was a platoon of Belgians set fire to the scrub and the grass to give themselves some cover as smoke screens. They abandoned their positions and ran backwards. Lieutenant Henry Huth, one of the last of the Belgians to leave the position, had ordered his platoon to go back. He covered them. And then he said, "I was running like hell. I felt this shock impact in my buttock. He'd been shot in the backside." But he said that didn't interfere with my running. We had to get out. And I think probably the last vehicle out of this battle space, with the possible exception of Huth's Centurion, was an incongruous vehicle, a bright blue painted truck. And this was operated by the entertainment section, the singers and comedians who entertain the brigade in their off-duty moments. So every element of the brigade is now being pushed into the battle to hold back this shrinking, collapsing perimeter as the Chinese advance in an attempt to overrun the rear guards. The engineers, who normally don't fight, have been shoved into the line as infantry to cover the Fusiliers and the rifles as they withdrew down valley. And now even the entertainment section are coming into action. So the last of the Belgians threw their weapons into the back of this truck, dived in after it, slammed the deck, "Get us out of here." And this took off in a cloud of dust and a shower of bullets. And this would essentially end the Battle of the Imjin River. 3 nights, 3 days, the brigade had held its position, had held the key road through the hills, which was a Chinese strategic objective, as it allowed them to break into the MSR, the main supply route, and cut the road to Weijongbu, the Weijongbu corridor, which would have bottled up the Americans out to the east. Stay with us.